All right. Hi, this is Pete Duranzio, and we are preparing for a Crash Magic online training for, I believe this is category lists, charts, and other things related. And I'll be recording this meeting for people to hear in the future. If they'd like to come back and look at that, it'll be on YouTube. And I'm going to describe where you can get to the list of these meetings and how you can access them if you'd like to see the recordings or find out about new meetings. So where I'm going to go here is to our pdmagic.com website. And up in the top right, we have this mini trainings information. And this just points into one of our knowledge base articles. And as you can see, we have a list of the trainings that we've done in the past here, and some of them have been recorded. It's been a couple of years since we've done a category list training that was recorded, so that's one of the reasons we're doing today's. Down at the bottom, there's a list here of all of the trainings that are upcoming, and you can tune into any of those. If you click on any of these, it'll tell you which meeting, what the link is, what time the meeting's running, and that's that information. Looks like Christy Gladhill from Oregon DOT just showed up. Welcome, Christy. She's up in Portland. And let's see what else I'm supposed to make sure I say here. So we've got the schedule. We're recording the meeting. And Tanya is now online. So it looks like she's muted, but she's out there. And so she will be answering any text conversations that are needed, any questions people may have. If you want to post that in the chat session, she'll take care of that for you. And if you ever need to reach us directly, back on the pdmagic.com page here, there is a contact us link. And you can contact us by phone, by email, and you can even use a browser interface to get to us. I think most of you know how to reach me. All right, so let's see what else we've got here. Are there any questions before I get rolling about what we're covering? Again, mostly category lists and charts for a little bit, and then once I'm done speaking about that, we will take questions about those, and then we'll take questions about just about anything, and we can investigate whatever you'd like in the program. So any questions before I get rolling? All right, very good. I always pick a configuration to work with before starting up the meeting, and I had it on good information that the city of Laguna Niguel was going to attend their first conference, our first mini training, so I chose their data set. I don't see them on yet. Maybe they'll show up while we roll. But the concepts are all the same. It really shouldn't matter which configuration we're using. However, after we're done with the presentation on category lists and charts, if you have specific issues or questions about your system, your configuration, by all means, we can jump over and take a look at your system. We have a number of them on our demo server, and those that we don't, we could jump into the main hosted program. All right. Hey, that's the end of my notes. Now it's time for me to ad hoc here. All right, here we go. So I'm going to log into the system. And because this is not a beginner training, I'll assume that each of you knows how to make studies and general charts and stuff. I have created a bunch to look at once we get rolling, so I've got some stuff that takes a little while to prepare that I didn't want to have to do online. So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is create a new study. And I don't know the intersections in Laguna Niguel, so I'm going to create an all data study and just get a listing of some locations we can work with. And for those that don't know, Laguna Niguel, which is where this data is from, is just south of Los Angeles, close to the shore. And I was just out there last week. So I'm just running a quick intersection location list so that I can get some location names that we can work with. And let's just pick a couple of these. All right, so I'll just mention, as long as I'm in here, that this is a high crash location list, and if you run one of these, one of your options will be to choose from the available reports that are in the system. And these are all the reports that I have. And what I'm going to do is, since we're going to be working with category lists, I'll create a couple of charts right now, and that'll be a good way to get started. So the first chart I'll do is time of day. I always choose that one because someone who used to work here sat down, his name was Scott, sat down and colorized the chart very nicely from night to day, and so it's very clear to read, and so it's a good place to start. So a chart uses a category list. Don't want to confuse that they are exactly the same because a chart has more information than a category list does, and I'll describe that. What you're seeing in the chart is these bins, right, and it tells what time of day each one of the crashes happened. So we're throwing all the crashes at this chart, and a bin has been filled for each one of the crashes. But in addition to that, a chart has other information in it. So I'm going to go click on chart settings so you can see what is specific to the chart other than the list. So if you look here at the settings, you'll see that the category list is time of day. That's all that has to do with the category list, actually. If you look at a chart and it has a title, and I go changing the title's colors or stuff like that, that's to do with the chart, not to do with the category list. It's essentially a way of displaying a category list is a way you can think about a chart. I'm going to put a legend on my chart. So again, stuff that's not to do with the category list that groups the crashes, but just the way it's displaying them. We'll leave marks off, left axis, color in red, and I'm just changing the settings. As you can see, when I choose each of these tabs, it's showing me in cyan, it's highlighted what I'll be editing when I make these changes. It looks like we're going to have a Christmas tree chart here, if I'm not mistaken. Well, sort of. Got red numbers down the left as I change them. I've got larger text up top. I turned on a legend over here, and I've got green time of day across the bottom. So the labels at the bottom are what we edited there as well. So what we've done is we've basically taken a category list, put it into a chart, and then displayed that as a chart. I'll focus on charts for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to go make other uses of category lists. Charts are simply probably one of the easier ways to understand what's in a category list and how it affects what you're seeing. Okay, so I'm going to go back in. I'll change the chart. I have these options down here where I can change the chart to a different chart type. So for example, I could show this as a pie chart. Not so great for time of day, to be honest, but these are your different times of days represented in a pie chart. Once I've displayed a chart, sorry, I wanted to get back to my bar chart. Once I've displayed a chart, I can also change the category list. And this is kind of interesting because I can change the category list without changing all these other settings. So the settings had to do with the chart itself, and now I can change the data that goes inside of it. So if I click here on the chart, this lets me change the category list. It's the same as when I was in the chart settings area and I'm showing where the category list was, and I could have clicked that button. Exactly the same as clicking this one, and they are the same button. So right now, as you can see, the category list is time of day. I could change that to, for example, severity, simpler category list, just 3 values in it. So here we have our number of injuries, our property damages, and our fatals. And again, same settings for the chart. Right? We've already sort of created a template. We haven't saved back that template, but we've created a template for that chart that we're using, and we can just drop any category lists into it, and we'll have the same display of whatever that data is. So for example, let's create a new category list. I'll click on category list here. And what happens when I do that, I get a new category list I can work with, and I can edit that. Oh, by the way, if you didn't attend last month's training, this dialog box may look a little bit different to you. In the past, the edit button here was on the right, and these other buttons are sort of scattered in different places. They've all been grouped together, so whichever item you have selected here is editable down here. So you can edit it, you can rename it, you can delete it, or you can duplicate whichever one is highlighted in blue, as this one is. New category list or new options for whatever pick list we have is over here. All right, so I'm going to go edit this category list. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a time or a type of collision category list. Now this, what I've done when I went to this, and I should stop here for a second, this is the edit category list screen, the category list editor. And while you can edit category lists manually, I can come in and click on add and fill in all the values for all these things. Much easier to get started by letting the program fill it in for you and then manipulating what it's created for you. So in this case, I'll choose fill category list, and I need to click on a categorical field. If I choose a field that's not categorical, it's not going to be able to create any bins for me. Categorical simply meaning that it's not age or milepost or something like that that has essentially an unlimited number of values. It's something that has categories of values in it. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to choose type of collision. This is the equivalent of first harmful in Colorado. Not sure what the equivalent is in Oregon, probably close to type of collision or collision type. So by choosing type of collision, the program goes back and it looks in the lookup tables for the system to find out what values it should put in there, what each of the values, all of the possible values for type of collision. And there is a value in there called not stated on the form, there's head-on, there's side swipe, and so forth. Each of these is put in as a condition. Okay, so it gives it a name based on the lookup, a description that's the same value, then it gives it a condition. Just to be real clear here, let's change this expression just a tiny bit. This means exactly the same thing. This says type of collision, let's move that over here. Type of collision equals type of collision dot sideswipe. Okay, that's what this expression is saying. It's using a different syntax, and I'll show you why. But what it's doing is it's using this syntax, which is using one of our functions. Okay, and so the function it's using is any match. And we use that because it's easier to group some of these together if you ever want to. You don't have to retype the expression, think about ands and ors and so forth in your expression. The syntax is much simpler. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say, for example, that we want to take not stated, okay, and we also want to take other, and we want to group them. They mean about the same to us in terms of what we can do for analysis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find what the value is for not stated. And here's the value of type of collision when it's not stated. And I'm going to copy that. And now I have the value for not stated, and all it's doing is checking for type of collision not stated. I'm going to delete that. So this is going to delete this entire category. And I'm going to come down to other. And other is currently checking type of collision is other. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss in there not stated. All I did was add a comma and a not stated. And because we're using this any match function, we don't have to put in and or anything like that. We're simply stating this value needs to match either this one or any other ones I put in there. I could put broadside in there, hit object, etc. This was originally very popular to use in Colorado, actually, because Colorado used to have a first harmful field that had about 6 or 7 types of collisions, and then it had about 40 fixed object types. And when doing analysis, it wasn't so useful to know the fixed object types, certainly not all 40 of them. And so we could group those either into one fixed object or into maybe 2 or 3 categories of fixed object. Colorado has since moved a little bit towards a standard called MUC that doesn't do that anymore. All right, so I've modified my list here a little bit by merging other and not stated. Let's see what else I can do. First of all, it would be useful to know that other was other or not stated. This is just the label that will appear on the chart or in the category list wherever it's displayed. Let's see if there's anything else in here worth changing. Most of the names there look okay. Let's look at some of the colors that are here. So head-on is labeled as is put in green. I'm just going to move that to, let's make that a bluish, grayish blue. Side swipe, this is in no particular order. I'm just going to try to catch a few shades of blue in here. Rear end, that's already a blue. Broadside, blue-violet. Okay, I'll make them all blue. What the heck? If any of the colors don't work for you, just assume that I'm colorblind. Okay, this is an interesting bin. I'm just going to point out this other or null. This was created at the same time these other ones were, but it doesn't exist in the lookups. It was created to catch all of the values that were not one of the values in the lookups. So if there's a value in your database for type of collision, and it doesn't exist in the lookups, perhaps a new value has been added, like perhaps if there was a driver distraction field and suddenly texting was added to it, it may not be in our lookups yet. It may have been a new change to the system. What would happen is it would fall into this other or null. And every time you let the program create a category list for you, it creates that other or null bin for you. Because the program creates it and you've actually got an explicit bin, you can change its color and you can decide its condition. If I was to delete this, however, and this bin didn't exist, the program will automatically create a bin internally when it finds a value that doesn't exist, and it'll make that bin red. You'll have absolutely no control over it other than it will always show up as a bar or a pie slice or what have you, and it'll be bright red and labeled missing data. So we put this in so you have a little more control, so you can decide what the label should be for it, and so that you can change its color if you want to change its color. So there we have. We've just created our first category list from type of collision. We've modified a few of the fields, changed some of the colors. I'm not going to address the symbol settings except to say that these are going to be used very shortly by our by our pin mapping function, and we can choose from. In fact, I think. Yeah, there we go. We can choose from ESRI symbol types and libraries, and so once you've done that, you can send those over to the pin map. All right, I'm going to save and go back to the list of categories. And I don't like the name. The name is kind of squished together. Type of collision is all one word. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it. This is also new. It used to be you had to come up here, rename, answer a few questions, which we're not doing anymore. Now you just click on rename. We'll format that a little bit more nicely, and we'll rename it. And that's done. So by choosing that category list, the chart changes to reflect that category list, but none of the other settings change. We still have these red labels down the left, still have the legend on the right, and so forth. Now this type of a chart suits itself a lot better towards being a pie chart than the time of day chart did. Time of day is sequential. And so you always you want to see gaps. If there, if there's no crashes at 2 p.m., you actually want to still see the 2 p.m. bin so that you see the pattern. In the case of type of collision, it may not be as important to see the values that were not populated at all, depending on what you're looking for. So that would be one reason why you might want to use a pie chart, is sort of eliminates those other bins. You don't see them. They were all labeled with 0. Something else I can do is I'm going to go back here, and whoops, that's not where I wanted to go. Change this back into a bar chart, and let's say you're going to display this, but you really don't, again, have any interest in these 4 values here, and there's no data in them. If I go to the chart settings, I can choose that when I'm showing this particular chart with this category list, it should not show any empty bins. And what will happen once I uncheck that box is I no longer have those empty bins out to the right. All I have are the 5 bins that actually had some data in them. And the same thing happens to the legend. It stops showing the other values entirely. Sometimes if you have a chart and you label the chart, you actually have to do that because there's some bins at 0 here that would all stomp on each other. I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's turn on our marks, which are these little labels for all the pie slices. I'm going to turn them on and go back to the chart. Okay, so that looks nice and clean, but if I left all the bins in, I'd have a bunch at 0, and all the labels would stomp over each other like that. And that's not terribly useful to have them all there, especially since they're all 0s. So this is a great place to not show empty bins. Alrighty, let's see if there's anything else in the charts that are necessary here. You can choose a sort order, and by choosing no sort order, you're getting the sort order of the lookups. So in other words, whether it's a bar chart, a pie chart, the order that the value appears in the lookups is how we're showing it when you choose no sort order. I can also choose to do it by name, alphabetically, or by count. So the ones that have greater values will be first when creating it. So here's our most, our next most, getting smaller and smaller till 0. Same thing would happen if I did the bar chart. Okay, so that's one sort. The other sort would be by name, alphabetically. And then the last, as I said, was if you just want to use it in the order that the lookups appear. And the lookups, when we put them in, will be in the same sequence. Almost all the time they'll be in the same sequence as they are on your crash report form. So while it may feel somewhat arbitrary that it's the order that the lookups are in, it's actually what's coming off of your report form. So they may be grouped more usefully than they might otherwise appear. Okay, questions about charts, chart configurations. We're going to explore some other uses of category lists, but for right now, finishing up with charts. Any questions there? Sharon? Just kidding. All right, no questions on charts. We're going to move on to another use for the category lists. So another use for the category lists that actually is kind of similar to charts in that it uses the coloring quite a bit. And that is you can assign a category list to a study. Okay, so studies have a few pieces of information with them. Number one is their query. It's what data you're looking at, which crashes exist. And that's based on your query. Intersection, milepost, case ID list, however you've gathered your data. Study also has a date range associated with it. And then you'll notice it has a filter and a category list. And that's what we're seeing right here. It's also repeated up here. So that's your study location, this is your date range, and then this is your filter, and this is your category list. So right now we have no category list assigned. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a quick listing. So I'm just going to grab a field list, and you'll get to see one of the places this shows up. And let's do a simple list, for example. So the list by default, when there's no category list assigned, is just white. It's a white background and black text. I can change that down here by choosing a category list for the study. And that's the word none over here, going to change to something else. So I'll choose category list. And in this case, I'm going to choose severity. Hopefully I have severity as one of my fields in there. Yes. So here's my severity field. And as you can see, my PDOs are all highlighted in yellow, and my injuries are all in orange. And note that there's several types of injuries, so this severity category list is grouping different injuries into one. Let me actually show you what that looks like, because that's another useful facet of being able to edit the conditions for any of the bins. So I'm going to go take a look at where this category list came from. And here it doesn't really help me much. I can't go edit it, right? Because it's not my category list. It's one of the shared ones that I don't have permission to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it so I can get a look at it. So I'll click on duplicate here. And now I have a severity copy. This one I can go edit. And this is a nice thing to be able to do, by the way, if someone's already created a category list that's close to what you want, but not exactly. Make a copy of it, modify that one. So I'll click edit here. And we'll see. So fatality, this is going to be a little trickier than I thought. Fatality uses the condition is fatality. Anytime you see this little underscore in front of a field name in the program, anywhere in Crash Magic, this means it's one of our built-in fields. It's something that we prepared during the configuration to understand your data. And so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you the condition for injury because it's just going to say is injury, not a fatality, and is an injury. So to show you what actually goes into is injury, I have to go somewhere else in the program, and I'll do that for you. But what's happening here is we have this calculated field that determines we do have an injury crash, and that's what's populating this injury bin. So you can see, by the way, you don't need to actually use fields from the database. You can use calculated fields that are looking at the fields in the database. Property damage is simply not injury, not fatality. And that's the definition of that severity list. Now, if you have your own, let's take a look at that. If you've got a severity field in your database, as I believe California does, I'm going to actually redefine it. So I'm going to go into severity copy again. I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to have to change it from severity copy because what I'm going to do is I'm going to refill this category list. And I believe we have something called collision severity. There it is. Here are the values for collision severity in the system. They have a PDO, they have fatality, and you notice these are now created in the same way as the original chart I showed you, the type of collision where we're using the AnyMatch function and using actual fields from the database, whereas the severity chart I showed you a moment ago used our calculated fields. And what that must be doing, what that other one must be doing, is taking injury severe, other visible, and complaint of pain, and grouping them all into a single category called injury. Okay, and that's essentially just how what I showed you how to do before, where I could grab the severe and copy this out. I could copy other visible here and paste it all into this one, comma, comma, and then get rid of the other two, and now I've got one bin that does all of those things. Okay, this will actually show up as well in highlighting here. So you see your property damage. Now your complaint of pain has one color, and your injury other visible has a totally different color. That's because we built a new chart, a new category list, and the category list gave a unique value to each one of the values in the lookups. Okay, so what's happened here is that by choosing the category list for the entire study, anything in the study that can be highlighted like this gets highlighted. Okay, so there's some things that it wouldn't make any sense to highlight. If I go to my type of collision chart, really not much good to highlight in here injury severity. There's no real place I would put that. However, there are some other places where it applies. One of them is the collision diagram. So if I open up a collision diagram here, okay, we're getting the severity colors based on that same category list. Okay, so the same highlighting that occurred here is occurring on the crashes themselves. All right, you're going to see a lot more of that in just a couple of minutes when I use this for some layouts in the program. Okay, so that's the category list. Another place that category lists can be useful, in addition to doing the study category list or doing a chart or highlighting like that, is I can do a crosstab. And a crosstab is simply two category lists. Built into the program are only these two crosstabs, so I'm going to choose one of them and then I'll go edit it. I'll make it different. By the way, always a good way to start. If you're in the program, you're trying to create something, whether it's a chart or a listing or anything else, and you're not exactly sure where to start, always start by creating one that's existing and then start modifying it. And you can always save back as a template whatever you've created, but it's always good to just start with something that already exists. In some cases, you don't have a choice. In other cases, you might have a choice, but it's much easier if you just choose one that exists. So time of day versus severity. This is the two category lists. Time of day was a category list, and severity was a category list. And you can choose any category lists for this. So let's take a look at what we have. These are the two category sets that exist. I'm going to go and create a new category set. So I'm going to create one. Right now it's untitled. So which two category lists do I want in my category set? Let's go edit that. And I get to choose my row categories first. So let's choose my row as not the severity here, but let's use the severity that I just created that has multiple values in it. And then I'll choose my column categories. And let's look at type of collision. That works. And I'll save. And the name of this now is collision severity versus type of collision. I can change that if I want to. I can rename it, but that's roughly what I'm looking for anyway, so that's okay. And so that's a breakdown of the different severity values against the type of collisions. And then there's sum down at the bottom, sums of each of those on the bottom and on the right edge. Now, notice that we don't have any fatals here. Now, I would say in most cases, if you're doing a severity type chart, you'd probably want to keep the zeros in there because fatal is an important part of the equation. But if you had, for example, not had fatal, perhaps you didn't have, let's pick a different column. I'm going to pick a different category list for this that makes a little more sense for that purpose. Let's pick a, let's see what category list doesn't necessarily have values that we're interested in all of them. Actually, you know what we're going to do? Here's what we're going to do. This button right here allows me to flip-flop the type of collision versus the collision severity. So now type of collision is going to run as the rows and severity will run as the columns. And that'll allow me to see those zeros, and that'll work just as well. Okay, so here I may not want to see, let's see which ones we've got zeros of. I may not want to see overturned in my list because there were no overturned. Vehicle, pedestrian, there were no pedestrian. While there was a bicycle, I think I saw a minute ago, there are no pedestrian, there's no not stateds, and there's no other or nulls. May not want to see those. Just like with the chart, I can choose to not show empty rows or to not show empty columns. And so these will just remove them from my Crosstab. Just makes that a little bit cleaner. Okay, and that's the Crosstab, and that's making use again of two category lists. And just like with the chart, I can create new ones right in the middle of the process. So I can go in here and say, have a category set here, and let's actually create a new one. We'll duplicate the one we've got, and then we'll edit it. And I may want to do something completely different than severity. Let's go click here. We'll do type of collision against something else. I don't like any of those, so I'm going to go create a new one, create a new category list for myself. At least I think I am. Oh, I'm sorry. I just had someone inform me that this is inconvenient, and I now agree. What was happening is I was creating a new category list, and it was simply creating them, but it wasn't selecting them, so I had to go find it. So I have a new category list, and let's see what I want to put in it. I'll click Fill Category List, and I will choose, let's find something in here that's of interest, lighting. And so I've got my various values for light, and I could choose daylight, dusk, dawn, a little bit darker, dark with streetlights, dark with no streetlights, streetlights not functioning, and other. All right, so now I have a category list for lighting, and I've just selected it in as my columns. Collision, type of collision versus lighting, and there you have that. And this would be another example of where we might want now, because we have these different types of lighting and we may not need to see the empty bins, the street lights not functioning, the nulls, the not stateds. I can come over here again and choose I also don't want to show empty columns. So no empty rows, no empty columns. And that should tighten up our category list quite a bit, our Crosstab quite a bit. Okay, I'm actually going to save this one because there's an interesting thing we can do with this in a little while. So if you haven't played with them before, templates are a useful thing to know how to work with. Once you've created a report, that's any of these guys, the high crash location list, diagram, listing, chart, Crosstab, you name it. If you've created it and you've configured it the way you like it, you can push this back to the server. It says save a copy of this Crosstab as a template. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to say this is my, what was this, lighting? Now I forget what it was. Should still be showing me that, huh? Collision severity versus type of collision. Except that's not what we've got in here anymore, is it? That's what we originally created. So what I want to have here is I want to have lighting versus type of collision. Lighting versus type of collision. Okay, and I'm going to just copy that because that's what I'd like to name it as well. So I'm going back now to save this as a template, which is what I originally intended to do. And I'll just paste that in there. That's the name of my new Crosstab. Create that template. The result of creating that template is that now, let's say I'm down here looking at Moulton Parkway and Rancho Niguel. If I come up here and I choose Crosstabs, that becomes one of my available Crosstabs because I've templated it. Okay, so I get similar chart, still eliminating empty bins. Now note that if these had values in them for this particular location, those bins would show up. It's a dynamic selection that says if it doesn't have a value, if it's all zeros, then don't show it. It doesn't matter that I created it here versus here. It'll always do that dynamically as it displays the crosstabs, look to see which ones were empty and hide those. All right. So now we've saved that as a template. Just remember that. We'll come back and look at that in a little while. Okay, questions about crosstabs? Or the category list we just created? Look, I had some promises a few minutes back that said we were going to have some conversation here. All right. So.
We're hanging you out to dry.
Say again?
We're hanging you out to dry.
Yeah, I guess. All right. So where we've been working so far is in a project called Main. This area up here is your projects. If you haven't played with this before, you can create additional projects. And what a project is, it's this list of studies right here is grouped into a project. So I can change to a new project, and when I change to a new one, this list will be empty. Or I can change to a different one that already exists, which will have whichever studies in it that I'd created for that other project. It's a nice way to organize your work. You could do it by time period, by study type, if you're looking at pedestrian data, or if you're looking at a particular stretch of road, perhaps you're looking at one road and you're pulling off different mileposts on that road, Christy. You could put those all into one project and that would group them together. So I have done that, and I have a project called Layouts for Categories, lest anybody thinks I didn't actually prepare for this presentation. So what I created in here is a few things. So number one, and I used layouts a lot, and the reason why I used layouts is I find it really handy to create layouts when I've changed the category list for a study. So here's a simple study, right, Alicia Parkway and Niguel, and I've created a layout, and the layout has a diagram and a list side by side. Okay, so here's my diagram and here's my listing. And there is at this point no highlighting going on. Sorry, no highlighting going on. That's the none there. There's no category list assigned to this study, so nothing's highlighted. I could choose to highlight this. So what I'm going to do, and I tell you, the truth is this is right here, what we're looking at is a PDF file that's been embedded into the web browser. And unfortunately, out of our control, PDF always sits on top of anything else you try to display. So if I try to display my category list right now and say I want to choose a category list, it's going to show up behind this and we won't see it. It won't lock anything up, so you can still move around and get to where you can see it. But I'm just going to avoid that problem altogether. I'm going to click on another spot in this study. So I'm going to click on the layout settings, and I will now click on my category list. As you can see, we're still getting, this is still a PDF that's stomping on top of this, unfortunately. We intend this summer to release the HTML5 version of Crash Magic. There will no longer be Adobe PDFs in there. We'll be using a different PDF viewer for that. So this problem will go away, and for that reason we're not working on it right now as a thing to solve. So what I'm doing here is I'm selecting a category list of time of day as an example. Once I've chosen that category list, I'll go back and look at my layout report. And these are now highlighted by their time of day. Getting darker into the night, a little bit less dark, and then light during the day. And so are the crashes. So if I zoom in on the crashes here, the crashes are also highlighted in that same exact way. So that's kind of a neat thing you can do with the category lists, is do different highlighting on your layouts. So let's see if I can find one here that I've already done. So here is an intersection where I've created, I've highlighted by time of day, but I've also put together a time of day chart list, time of day chart, and a list to go with my diagram. This works sort of like a legend when you're looking at your PDF. So now I've got this sort of acting as a legend for the colors because I made a chart out of the same thing that I've categorized the study with. So this chart tells me the colorings I'm looking at. This listing is now highlighted using those colorings, as is the diagram, highlighted exactly the same way. So now I'm looking at the time of day. Another example of that would be this one here. I think I did almost exactly the same thing where I did a weather chart in the top right, a listing down below, and then the diagram on the left. Same idea, different colors, slightly different legendy chart up here. And so that's a handy way to look at your category lists when you've categorized an entire study. You don't have to show that type of a legend. You can also do something just like this, which will be essentially the same as this list plus this diagram, but without a chart. And that's just choosing a different layout. Mark and Sharon, have you played with layouts much?
No.
No, I've tried to, but I really haven't had time.
Okay. Let us know if there's a particular layout you'd like. If you're thinking, oh, that's actually kind of neat. I like that, the time of day with this listing and this diagram. These are one of the neat things about the layouts is that the way they're created now, they can be templated so that I can select. I'll give you an example. Let's go into our high crash location list here, pick a location that we haven't seen yet. Let's go right here. And in fact, I was going to choose a diagram, and then I was going to make a layout, but I don't even have to do that. So I'm at Crown Valley and Moulton Parkway, and I'm going to open this up. I can find all of my layouts here. They've been templated, and I can choose to do diagram, a time of day chart, and a chart list. Sorry, time of day and a field listing. And that'll create me a new study with that layout already taken care of for me. Created a new report. And so that's the exact same report, and the only thing I have left to do at this point is note that the study was not highlighted. So I just have to set a category list for that. And again, if I do that here, I'll just show you what this looks like. I'm going to do that here. I don't see anything. It just popped up behind this, unfortunately. As long as I'm in some place that doesn't have a PDF showing, I'll see it. So I can click here. And I'm going to choose my time of day and go back and grab my my layout. So really what that allows you to do is create layouts that you like and drop them into any study that you've created. So some people will do this, in fact, rather than even showing a collision diagram and just printing the diagram, they'll always have a layout prepared that includes perhaps the diagram and the list of fields for the diagram, and that can just be the default way that you see diagrams. All right. Have we got any other category list stuff, Tanya, that I'm forgetting? Listings. Even Tanya's been silent today. Oh, wait, she maybe walked away. You still around, Tanya?
I am here.
The last place that you will see category lists, or I should say the next place that you'll see category lists, is not yet implemented, and that's going to be in our pin maps. And when we have the category lists in there, we will be using what you saw a couple minutes ago. Let's go in here, take a look at our category list. And I mentioned this already. But in my category list, I'll be able to choose, the color will already be applied. I'll be able to choose the symbol type and the symbol style, and on the pin maps be able to show crashes by category.
Oh, Crosstab?
Yeah.
I hear a question being generated.
It's Sharon, of course.
Hit me.
I have a question. I was thinking, I'm looking at, because in Colorado we do our, instead of type, we do first harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to compare a crosstab of first harmful with the officer's coding of the driver's action. Is that possible? I mean, like if it was distracted driving.
I don't see why not. Let's take a look at what we've got. I don't know if we've got you as someone on our demo server. I'm sorry?
Or Mark pointed out, I really probably want the most apparent human factor.
Okay, let's go do that. So what I'm going to do here, break a couple of rules. Right now we're running in the demo server, and our demo server does not have you in this list. Right, I don't have a copy of Douglas County there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into the actual hosted app and go find Douglas County.
Figured you were getting tired of talking anyhow.
And we'll log in here. Now, whenever anybody talks, I get to quick grab a sip of tea.
Okay.
Make sure my voice doesn't go away completely. Okay, so I just logged in, and I'm not sure at all what I'm looking at here. Looks like I've got a whole bunch of all data studies. Let's see if I've got a better. Wow, someone's been doing some work in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, except this is me. Perhaps you had a problem at some point, and our solution to your problem was for me to copy one of your studies. All right, let's take a look what we've got here. Make sure I've got some data. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to do one other thing before we move on. You'll notice I'm getting this number 118 here and diagram/60. I'm set up to debug your configuration, and I'm going to go turn that off and log back in so we don't see all that mess. It kind of gets distracting, at least to me, if not to you. So I have this application debugging and help system debugging. I'm going to turn that all off, and I'll log in again. Alrighty, a little bit cleaner. So now we've got a location, we've got some crashes in here, and let's go create the two category lists that you're looking for. I find it easiest to create category lists by creating charts. It lets me see what the values are. I've got a decent editor to put them together. So let's first create a chart for your first category that you were referring to. And as I said, in some cases, when you go create something, the first thing you have to do is create one that you're going to just use to get you a template. But now what we want to do is go create a new category list specifically for what you're looking for. So here's where I choose my category list. And I'm going to say I'd like a new category list. That's our untitled right there. And I'm going to edit it. Now the first field, I'm going to do the easier one. I think you said first harmful. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pick that one first. There's our first harmful. Ah, well, let me be the first to say, okay, so you have not got the new muck values from the new form. You're entering your own data. We're not importing it from the state.
I was wondering about that when you said it.
Yeah, so when you enter your values, you're picking one of these. So your data is perfectly fine, but you do have the old style of lookups for first harmful. Now first harmful has something like, you know, these 5 or something or 6 in there. And is it even called first harmful? It's something like vehicle alignment, but it's the equivalent of first harmful. So in your situation, you're likely to want to group all of these into one, as opposed to showing all of them. That said, all of the category list reports right now are capable of not showing zeros, 0 columns or 0 bins. So I'm going to say for right now we're not going to worry about these. We'll see if that becomes a problem later. So here's our category list for first harmful. That's already taken care of. And I am going to
Yes. I just wanted to clarify. You want them to group their fixed objects together?
It typically,
I
think it's easier to see. You guys can correct me on this, but I'm thinking, let me go back into the list. While you may want to group, for example, your guardrail, cable rail, and a barrier, it may not be the same to you as bridge structure. It's probably almost definitely not the same as vehicle debris or cargo, embankment. So you may want to group these in terms of things they may have hit, You may want to group them in terms of things that need replacing, things that move. Oh, I guess they're all fixed objects except for like wild animal. But yes, my logic is you might want to take, whoops, this whole list of all these fixed objects and just call them fixed object. You may not. You may want to know what individual thing each one of those vehicles hit. But that's sort of up to you. So to answer your question, Tanya, yes, my thinking was everything that's a fixed object you could group, but that's certainly up to who's using the software.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, that does.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have our first harmful as a category list. And the next thing we wanted, and I'm guessing this is the more tricky one. What was the other one you wanted that you were talking about?
The most apparent human contributing factor.
So I'm just going to hop right out there and say, is that a field in your database?
It's at the top.
There
It's driver.
Contributing factor. So this is contributing factor, and we've got one for driver 1 and for driver 2. And you probably want both of those. So that makes it a little bit tricky. Certainly not undoable, and we're going to do it for you right now. But it is a little bit tricky, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to choose contributing factor 1, and this is not the first contributing factor, it's the contributing factor for driver 1. So if we look at all of these, we have all the possible values that you were referring to, right? Asleep, fatigue, illness, and so forth. And we're checking just for driver 1, right? I'm going to run this. I'm going to do this one first so you see what the simple version of this is, and then I'm going to combine 1 and 2 so you can actually have both drivers represented in that chart. And I'll explain to you why that's a little bit different than just choosing one of the fields. Okay, so first of all, I've now created a contributing. Let's actually rename this one as well. We'll call this contributing factor 1. Okay, in fact, Tanya likes to do driver or vehicle 1, and I think that's a good idea. So it's contributing factor driver 1. So now I've got these charts. We can take a look at them individually as charts. Right, there's our values for it. But let's now create the crosstab you were referring to. So I go into create a crosstab. Once again, I'm just going to pick an arbitrary crosstab, and as soon as it's run, I'm going to go change its values. So I'm going to say, choose different stuff. Sorry, category set. I'm going to create a new category set. A category set is simply 2 category lists to compare against each other. So I've got one, it's untitled. I'm going to click on edit, and I'm going to choose your row categories. In your row categories, we'll choose contributing factor. And your column categories, I'll choose first harmful. And now I've got a contributing factor versus first harmful. Okay, this one is just screaming to have not used columns and not used rows removed. So we're getting rid of both of those. And there you have. Okay, so there's your type, your first harmful happening up here, and your contributing factor happening here. Now, as we already discussed, that's not including driver 2 at this point, right? But do you understand, is just getting here makes sense so far? We're just going to build a little bit.
No, that makes sense.
Terrific. Okay, we need to manipulate this contributing factor category list, make it a little bit different. So rather than messing with the one that's already in there, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to make one that I'm just going to call contributing factor. Okay, and we'll rename that. Okay, so this one now, however, is incorrect because it's still just driver 1. And I need it to be driver 1 and driver 2. Okay. Remember when I said that this function, let me make a copy of this because I'm about to wipe it out and want it back. So I'm just pasting that into a notepad that I can hold off over here for a little while. So remember I said this is actually the same as this. Okay. What I really want to do now is I kind of want to say this. I want to say driver contributing factor 1 equals this, or two is that, right? That's the expression that I want in order for this to work. Well, I told you also that we have this nice function over here that we've built that's supposed to make it easier for you to build these functions and modify them. So that's this. And I told you that you could add other conditions out here, right? So I could put in here the one for fatigue next, and I can put in illness or medical next. But that doesn't really help us because we're not trying to group the different values. What we're trying to do is look at both vehicle 1 and vehicle 2. Well, here's what I'm going to do. It turns out that this any match function, you don't have to put the field value first and then the lookup. You can do it in the other direction. So I'm actually just going to take this, paste it first. Okay, so now it means exactly the same thing, right? If you look at that, we're now checking to see if the value of sleep is equal to the value for the field for contributing factor vehicle 1. It means exactly the same thing, no different. However, by putting that value up first, I can now do that. And now I'm checking to see if either vehicle 1 or vehicle 2 match asleep as the value. That makes some sense?
Okay, yeah.
You with me there? Okay.
I'm with you.
Terrific. So now I've copied this piece of text right here. I'm going to go to the second one. Oops. Tanya's worked with me for many years, so I'm fairly sure that she's sitting here watching very closely to make sure I don't make a really stupid mistake. I'm actually going to do all of these, and the only reason I'm going to do all of these is because I think you're going to want this when I'm done. So there's no sense in giving you a half completed.
You just even mark some work for me.
You know, after his day yesterday, he might take you up on that.
Yesterday was tricky. We actually got lucky, though. In fact, Christy's on. Yesterday, we had an inability to do the training because we had network problems here resulting from a power problem. But it got solved right about the time the training would have started anyway, and Christy needed some help. And so it was actually good timing for everybody except for people who thought they were going to get a training yesterday, because Christy got the help she needed as soon as our network fixed itself. So you'll notice, by the way, I am paying no attention to formatting here. I'm making sure the syntax is right, but I'm not really worried if I have an extra carriage return or an extra space here or there. And because I know Tanya's watching completely closely on this, I can't possibly be making any mistakes either. So what I'm doing, if you're not catching it completely, is I'm basically leaving the value that I want to check for in as the first parameter, and I'm just throwing driver contributing factor and driver 1 and 2 as the two things I'm checking. And since they all look exactly the same, I can just keep copying and pasting. See, there's where I lose it. Okay. Okay, this last one, this other or null, is much more complicated because I'm checking for driver contributing factor 1 to be any of the values in here, and then I would check for 2. I told you already that if I didn't put this in, the program's going to go and put in a red bar anyway. I'm fine with that. I'm not going to go worrying about that. So I'm going to actually delete this so that it doesn't appear to be there. I'm not going to be able to colorize it, but I'm not going to worry about it not being there. I don't think it's going to affect anything. Now, what we've done potentially causes a problem. Anybody want to tell me what my problem is going to be as I run this? Come on. Okay,
It's going to add up more.
I'm going to have more of these. Oh, looky here. This chart contains at least one record that was placed into 2 or more bins. This is the result of an incorrect chart definition, right? Because charts, pie charts, bar charts, they're all supposed to add up to 100. You're supposed to have, if you have 10 crashes in the diagram or 10 crashes in the chart, we should have 10 represented in the bins. And this one's not going to have 10. It could have probably 20 if everybody has a value. So it's not letting us even use that chart. It's not letting us show that chart. It's actually the category list, but it's not showing us the chart as a result. Let's go back and edit and see if we did something wrong. So we got our list, and we got all the values in there. They all parsed, or it wouldn't have complained. It wouldn't have even tried to run. Allow crashes in multiple bins, and it will not sum to 100%. This is your protection in case you're playing with this list at some point and you inadvertently create a bin that will accept 2 different crashes in it. So you're making some complex expression here and you make a mistake. You want to know, rather than having that bin get lots and lots of crashes in it that don't belong. I'm looking at this and saying, okay, I've done this nice and carefully. This is exactly what I intend, and I know they're not going to add up to 100%, so it's okay, and I check that checkbox. Now it's accepting it. Now it's okay. And so now what we're seeing is 2, 4, 7, and 8, 15 in there instead of what I think should have been about 7 crashes that are at this location. Okay, but now I can use that in my severity, time of day versus severity. And so let's go select here. Right now we're still using, it's still called time of day versus, Tanya, would you make a note? I think we've done this before, but this is not time of day versus severity. Could you just make a note that crosstabs should auto-name themselves? Because they're not. So this is going to be contributing factor versus first harmful. I'm just going to change that in the code as soon as I get a chance. Okay, so let's edit this list, and instead of using contributing factor D1, we're going to just take that out of there, but we'll select it to make sure we get it right. Here's my contributing factor. And I'm just going to hope that it allows us to do that on a crosstab. Cool. Let's see what our summing is looking like here, though. So I've got driver. Have we got the right numbers in here? 6, 2. Yeah, that's correct. But what you'll see is the total here. It knows that the total is supposed to be 9 for the number of crashes, but each of these is totaling differently, which is correct because we're looking at two drivers in here. Does that make sense? In this direction, yeah, that works. In the other direction, that doesn't work. Okay. So the total here that it's giving you is going to be the correct number for the diagram, but the total that comprised it may not add up to 100. And that's why we had to check that checkbox, but that should give you the answer you were looking for there.
It does.
Terrific. Well, what I'm going to do, and this is, if you haven't played with this before, this is another useful piece to know. So we've created a couple of things. We've created a category set, which is contributing factor versus first harmful. We've also created 2 category lists. We've created a contributing fact and a first harmful category list. And you need those. And if I go click on any of those to go change, you'll notice they're all in my personal account.
Right.
Not going to help you out at all when I leave.
Mm-hmm. I can call you afterwards, can I?
All right. Well, here's the solution. I'm going to do it for you, but this is how you will do it in the future if you have a need to. As long as you're an administrator on the system, you'll have this button up here. Oh, we lost Christy. Oh, must have been boring her. Here's the admin button, and if you're an administrator, you can jump over to the admin side. And on the admin side, I can look in here and say, look, Pete has created some stuff. He's created category lists, and he's created category sets. Well, my set relies on those lists, so the first thing I'm going to do is go move my lists. So I'm going to take these lists from Pete's account, Okay, so I've got contributing factor, and right now it's in Pete's account. A quick way to move, I could copy and paste it and delete the old one and stuff, but I can just move it by going over here to the shared account, Douglas County shared, and contributing factor is now shared. Everybody now has access to it.
Cool.
Wow, and slow. Okay, go back into category list, first harmful. I'm not going to give you the driver 1 because that would be confusing and not complete. So go back to first harmful here and put that one in shared.
My question, Pete, is so sometimes I just want to look at driver 1 because they like maybe ran a stop sign or ran a red light. So, you know, really I don't care what driver 2 action was. I just want to know why driver 1 failed to stop when they were supposed to.
So you'd prefer to just have driver 1 information?
Yeah, that's what triggered it, because I was working on a project that happened to have this particular problem, that I had a distracted driver that caused injury.
Okay. Well, I'll make both of those available to you then. So there's contributing factor driver 1.
I have a question for you. Do you guys typically record driver 1 as the one that possibly caused the accident?
Yeah, it's almost always the number 1 is the at-fault driver. The only time it's not is like when they can't determine.
Yeah.
They can't determine who is at fault.
Okay.
And
yeah, and you have the ability to do that since you're entering your own data. In a lot of agencies, that's not a known variable. So that's why that works for you.
Yeah, and that's kind of how our deputies kind of do the reports anyhow. So.
Alrighty, so what we've got now, when you go look for your category lists, is you'll notice they're not in my personal anymore. I've now got a contributing factor and a contributing factor driver 1, and I've got a first harmful.
Cool.
Thank you
very much.
You're welcome. Want to make each training worthwhile. You have the ability as administrator to go in and change the coloring on those or to modify the category bins if you want to do that. My recommendation is, if you're going to do that, I'll actually show you kind of a cool trick. Let's say that you decide you're gonna tweak this one a little bit. And I'm only doing this because there's nobody else on the line, because there's some people that get very thrown by these things. So if this starts to throw you, just stop me and say I don't want to see any more of that. So we have this crosstab that's contributing factor versus first harmful. And actually you said you preferred contributing factor 1, so let's go do that. Let's just duplicate this one. So I'm going to go back to contributing factor 1, driver 1, against first harmful. And that's an appropriate name for it. Contributing factor 1, first harmful. And since the program is not doing this for me, I'm going to do that. Okay, let's say that you're looking at this and you're going contributing factor 1 versus first harmful, and you would like to change something about this. In fact, what we'll do now, this is a good place to do it. Let's say that you want to combine, for example, this and this into one. But other people are using your system. If you go in and you try it and you mess up, all of theirs are messed up as well because it's a shared resource, right? You have to remember that. If you go in right now and you say, I'm going to go mess with this guy right here. Sorry, it was a contributing factor I'm going to change. Which is the one I'm going to change? Ah, darn it. Yeah, contributing factor is the one I'm going to change. So I'll go edit this. And I go to contributing factor, and I say, I'm going to change this. I'm an admin, so as a result, you're able to edit it, right? I can click on edit right here, and I can make changes to it. But if I make changes to that, and I make a mistake, and someone else runs contributing factor in any other way, they need that category list, it won't work, and their report will fail. So what I would do is I would say duplicate this, and now I've got my own copy of it. But here's something kind of cool. I could name it this. I could leave it as D1 copy while I work on it, and I can create a new report that uses D1 copy. But I can actually rename this like this, and you'll notice I'm naming it exactly the same as the one that's shared across everybody. Watch what happens when I do that. I'm going to click on rename this. It's gone. It appears, it's hidden basically in the shared account. What's happened is it's saying you're using this one. You've got your own, and you're using your own. Therefore, you don't get to see the one that's shared by everybody. And now I can go edit this. But as I make any changes to this, anything I do in here is not going to impact anybody else because it's your personal one, and your account, while you're running it, will only look at your personal one. Everybody else is still looking at the shared one. Then when you've got it all right, you put it back in the shared one. Is that too confusing, or is that okay?
No, I just won't rename it the same. I will tell Mark no, he can't rename it the same thing so it doesn't mess with it.
Well, the idea here is that you could do it on purpose, right? If I did this on purpose, then I can go run the report, and while you're working on it, let's say, Sharon, you're working on it, and Mark is working with the chart that you already had from ages ago, or the crosstab you had from before that was already working. And you want to tweak this. So you go in to tweak it. This is how you can do it. You can name it exactly the same, tweak it, do whatever you want, and then when you're done, copy it back in to the shared account. But this way, your account looks like anytime it asks for contributing factor D1, it gets yours. Nobody else gets to see that. Only you do. And when you're all done and you've manipulated it the way you want and you copy it back up to the shared, and that's all taken care of, I can get rid of your local one, and now I see the shared one again, which has been there the whole time.
But because I don't have admin, it won't tweak the admin one.
If you don't have admin, you have to do the copying. Yeah, if you don't have admin, you have to duplicate. Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so I won't be messing with.
Well, you can. Yeah, he's speaking for admin right now. But if you wanted to modify one slightly, you can use that same method.
Just do the duplicate like I normally do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And then if you're not admin, you can hand that back to Mark, and Mark, you can update the category list to be so that everybody has the one that she's listed with.
I don't always think like everybody else, so.
What you're seeing, by the way, it appears, I don't know if you're noticing the big flashing white screen that says there was an error. That's occurring when I cancel editing of a category list. And I've seen it before. I haven't got a good pattern for it. So if you ever do see that, if you go into a category list and you edit it and you select cancel and you get that white screen like this, return to Crash Magic. It looks like now it's at least fairly repeatable. Maybe I can go fix it. Tanya, you making a note of that? I've seen it so many times, but I never remember that it's a priority to go back and fix, and that one does need fixing. All right. Okay. Questions about anything at this point?
You were mentioning you're going to a different PDF viewer. We were just curious which one.
Well, here's the thing. Every major browser is doing away with the ability to embed what are called Activex controls. And an Activex control is when you have another program that exposes its ability to display content on Windows. And the reason they're doing away with the ability to do that is because it's a security risk and it's Windows specific. You can only use Activex on Windows, and it's a security risk because it's kind of easy to get an Activex that isn't the one you thought running, and it has full access to your whole machine. And that's what Adobe PDF is, that's what Silverlight is, and it's what Flash is. So what you're going to find right now is if you go to Chrome, none of those exist anymore. Firefox just disabled them about a month ago. And Internet Explorer will end of life. They're not changing it anymore, they're not updating it anymore. And their new version, Edge, doesn't support them either. What they're all doing now is allowing you to embed stuff that's built to the browser, and most of the browsers are providing their own PDF viewer internally, or else there's JavaScript ways to do it. So there are ways that you can display the PDF inline. That doesn't mean that you can't use Adobe Acrobat. When you click down here for a report and you say show me the report, it's still going to show you whatever is installed on your machine. Right, so in my case, even if I don't have Adobe Acrobat, in fact I don't, I have Foxit as my PDF reader. Right, so you'll still have that. It'll be whatever your reader is, and it could be Adobe Acrobat, but what we embed on screen won't be that. So
that's actually where the question.
Very much. Sorry?
And that's actually where the question came from. They're kind of slowly moving us over to Nitro, I think, here at the county.
Right. We're experiencing that all around. I can't move fast enough. I'm trying very hard to get our newest HTML5 viewer, and if there were just a few fewer fires burning in my office, I would be done right now. But
we know the feeling.
Sure, you can.
That's why I haven't played with layouts much yet.
What? Say that again.
I said we know the feeling. That's why I haven't played in layouts much yet.
Right, exactly. Oh, and what I meant, I don't know if I finished my sentence on there when I was describing it before. If you come up with a layout you'd like and don't feel like taking the time to create it, shoot us an email. This is what I want to see. We'd like to be able to create one of these. We can create it, put it in your shared account, and you're done. And you'll have that. We don't mind doing some of those.
Okay.
Did you ask about the 404 yet?
Yeah, we've got a couple of people around here that have been using the Crash Magic, and they have the shortcut saved on their browser, but then it comes up with some kind of 404 error message.
Oh.
And I actually had it the other day, but then it worked fine afterwards.
Let me take a look, because the way to create a shortcut is down here. Okay, and what that should do, let me see if it works. Let me first verify that we haven't broken something on it. But now I should have a shortcut.
Never even seen that.
Magic. Well, let me tell you why that's there. Okay, so that does work, and that's how they should create their shortcuts. But here's what the shortcut actually needs to be. You normally go here, and you'd be tempted to make a shortcut that looks like that. Right. Take the word magic off it, and that's what the shortcut actually needs to look like. If I make a shortcut to magic, it will fail. Okay, if you freshen the browser and you go straight to magic.
Okay.
So just take the word magic off of there and you're set. That's the equivalent, however, that's exactly what we're doing down here. When we click on this, we basically take that off. See if you can actually see it. Overwrite it, Crash Magic, properties. And that's all that we're doing, is we're putting in the exact same URL, but we're taking off the magic part.
Can you put it into the toolbar the same way?
I believe you can actually even just move it into the favorites bar. I might not be showing my favorites bar. How about that? So it shows here. What toolbar is this one? Favorites. Oh, this is a PDF bar. It is favorites that you want. There we go. So that's your favorites bar. And so all I had to do there was move it from where it was to wherever I wanted it to be.
Thanks, Pete. It was actually me having.
Oh, no, it was Amy too.
Oh, Amy.
Yeah, that's fine. And in fact, you know what? It just occurred to me.
Fine this last week, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's unintuitive. That's why we created this link down here, is because that magic piece is kind of a pain to figure out. I was just going to say that when you click on Add to Favorites, you can actually put it straight into your favorites bar.
Okay.
Like that before you add it.
Awesome.
No.
I'm going to go fix that so I don't have to yell at Mark again.
Sounds good. I'm going to end the recording right now. Here we go.